The Galactic Council Summit convened under the domed sky of Roxas 3, a neutral moon known more for its crystal fauna than its diplomatic neutrality. The sky above shifted in polite pinks, engineered to keep tempers cool. Below, 13 species gathered in a crescent of silver chairs, robes rustling, antennae twitching, translation nodes humming like content bees. At the far end, surrounded by nothing but the space she'd left between herself and the galaxy's arrogance, stood Earth's ambassador. She was 60 if she was a day, human years. A floral print shawl hung off her shoulders, like it had once been loved and forgotten in a cedar trunk. Her silver hair was tied in a meticulous bun, not a strand out of place. No visible armor, no weapons, just a thermos tucked under her arm like a priestess holding sacred wine. When she stepped forward, her shoes made no sound, just a soft hush of soles against the polished obsidian floor. "Ambassador Yaga," said the chair drone. "Earth, Sector 9. You may speak." She smiled. Not widely, not falsely. The kind of smile an old librarian gives you when you return a ruined book. "Thank you kindly, Chairman Rizol. I appreciate the courtesy." A few snickers rippled through the delegates. The Draggery representative, tall and scaled, leaned toward his advisor with a curled lip. "Is this the one?" The humans sent a grandmother. She heard it. Yaga always heard everything. She poured herself a cup of tea with small, ritualistic movements. Chamomile, steeped precisely 7 minutes. Her hands did not tremble. "Esteemed members of the council," she began, voice soft but firm, "I've come today to offer Earth's final position on the issue of border provocations, trade route seizures, and disappearances." An amphibian diplomat waved a webbed hand dismissively. "Earth exaggerates. Isolated pirate incidents." Yaga nodded, as if that were a reasonable perspective. "Yes, isolated and coordinated, and somehow always happening within 30 hours of an Empire scout ship passing through." Another murmur. The kind of uncomfortable noise that means someone's realizing they've been caught holding a lit match above a powder keg. Chairman Rizol tried to bring the room back to order. "Earth has suffered losses. The Council acknowledges." "We don't want an apology," she said gently. "We want to be left alone." She sipped her tea. Several representatives blinked at the simplicity of the demand. The Draggery warlord stood. "This is absurd. Your species is barely a footnote in history. You pollute, overbreed, bicker with your own kind." "Yes," she said warmly. "We're a mess. But we're our mess. And we're awfully good at cleaning it up when pushed." He snarled. "If Earth continues its defiance, the Empire reserves the right to re-educate. Colonization protocols will be engaged. You will be civilized by orbital fire if necessary." Silence fell like a guillotine. Yaga's expression didn't change. She tilted her head, as if regarding a mildly disappointing souffle. "Then, I understand. Thank you for your clarity." A pause. Nothing more. She placed her thermos on the table, uncapped it. Steam coiled into the air like breath from a sleeping dragon. Something sharp and metallic pinged in the far sensors. A few council aides glanced at their data slates. Network interruptions. Static. Harmless. Chairman Rizol cleared his throat. "Madam Ambassador, is that?" "Oh, just tea," she said. "Would you like some? It's human tradition to share something warm when tensions rise. It soothes the bones." None accepted. From the back of the chamber, a Lauranite emissary whispered to their kin. "She's stalling. They're planning something." Yaga looked around the room. Her gaze was gentle, grandmotherly, and utterly unreadable. "We humans have an old saying," she said. "Let sleeping dogs lie." It means don't provoke something just because it's quiet. The reptilian warlord scoffed. "You think yourselves dangerous?" "Oh no," she said. "We think ourselves tired. And that's worse. Tired creatures don't make threats. They make arrangements." Her eyes, behind delicate spectacles, met his. That was the moment he stopped grinning. The chair drone interrupted. "Ambassador Yaga, your time is—" "I'm finished." She capped her thermos, tucked it back under her arm. "Thank you for your patience." She turned, walking slowly toward the exit, Her footsteps still whisper-soft. The air behind her felt heavier, as though something ancient had passed through the room, something wearing the skin of a human diplomat. Chairman Rizol addressed the council. Let us recess to consider Earth's statements in private. But the reptilian warlord bared his fangs. I say we strike now. Show these soft-bellied mammals what power means. In the hallway, a human aide, young, nervous, dressed in a crisp civilian uniform, caught up to Yaga. Ma'am, was that wise? That warlord, he just threatened planetary sterilization. She patted his arm. Oh dear, he thinks that was a threat. Poor thing. He blinked. Are we doing anything about it? She gave a slow smile. I've already made arrangements. He fell into silence beside her as they walked. Behind them, the delegates were still shouting. Somewhere in the council chamber, the floor's undercurrent of coded nanites pulsed once, unnoticed. A tiny tremor, a single seed taking root. The aide exhaled. Should I notify Central? Yaga pulled a small, ancient device from her coat. It looked like a pocket watch. She clicked it once. Somewhere, light years away, something ancient stirred. No need, she said. I've notified the right people. Are we really going to war? She stopped, turned to him, and for the first time, he saw something behind her eyes, not fury, not fear. A kind of gravity, like someone who'd once held the weight of dying stars in her palm and found them light. My boy, she said gently, war is what they wanted. We'll give them something worse. Understanding. They stepped into the human shuttle, its door closing behind them with a hiss. As the ship pulled away from Roxas 3, the stars beyond seemed to lean closer. Inside, Yaga poured herself another cup of tea. The aide sat across from her, hands fidgeting. Ma'am, he asked quietly, what do they call you? I mean, what do the others call you? Back home. In Central. She stirred the tea, eyes fixed on the swirling liquid. Some call me Baba Yaga. He flinched. Wait. The Baba Yaga. She raised an eyebrow. Is there another? The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was absolute. Out the shuttle's window, the moon of Roxas 3 gleamed, unaware that its summit had just triggered the slow unraveling of an empire. Yaga took a final sip and whispered, almost to herself, I did ask nicely. The first day after the summit passed like a breath held in a crowded room. No alarms, no retaliation, no sanctions, just silence. Not the uneasy kind that rustled in the corners of war rooms, but a vacuum, intentional, deliberate, sharpened by restraint. General Voxt of the High Triumvirate leaned over the holomap inside the Citadel core, watching tiny Earth-space transmissions crawl like ants across secure frequencies. Where are the countermeasures? He barked. His aide, a pale-skinned Cephrian with a perpetually anxious blink, replied, There are none. Earth hasn't mobilized. No fleet movement. Civilian ships still orbiting Luna. No increased encryption. No intercepted strikes. Voxt narrowed his golden eyes. They're mocking us. Possibly, the aide squeaked. Or they're stalling. Outside the Citadel's command deck, the stars above Hierax Prime pulsed in their usual serenity. Below, the core world of the Empire carried on in dazzling ignorance. Opera halls, trade ports, children watching sky trains race along plasma tracks. The notion of Earth being a threat was laughable, or it had been, until the war rooms started noticing the quiet. The second transmission came at 0400 Galactic Standard. It was a music file, human in origin, a cheerful, plucky tune accompanied by whistling and soft drum beats. Its lyrics were looped in crude, non-encrypted form. Don't worry, be happy now. Voxt slammed his clawed hand on the console. Is this supposed to be a threat? No one answered, because they couldn't tell. The Empire had made contact with over 600 intelligent species. Half had tried war. The rest tried deceit. Humanity had tried jokes, then maps, then recipes. And still, somehow, Earth was always there at the end of a conflict, grinning. The third transmission was a handwritten letter. Physical. Delivered by drone. It read, We prefer not to fight. But if you insist on pressing, we are very good at letting go. Fondly. Yaga. Voxed passed the message down the line. Half the council laughed. The other half stopped breathing. Meanwhile, on Earth, nestled in the snowy reaches of northern Wyoming, a quiet greenhouse glowed through the storm. Inside, Baba Yaga was pruning her roses. She hummed softly to herself, clipping precisely at the base of each stem, speaking to the plants in a near whisper. Too much bloom, and you draw attention, but too little, and they forget you can flower at all. Her assistant, Mason, hovered awkwardly near the hydrangeas, datapad clutched to his chest like a shield. Ma'am, you really should be on a secure channel. The Empire has already suspended negotiations. Their armada is on standby near Epsilon Reach. She glanced up without pausing her clippers. They're waiting for something. That's all this is. They're waiting for a reason to strike. No, she said, setting a petal aside. They're waiting for confirmation they've already lost. Mason stared. I don't understand. You will. She turned to him fully now, her voice gentler. Humans don't strike with force. Not first. We unmake things. Slowly. Precisely. We make silence contagious. A chime echoed from the corner terminal. Mason read the data. His blood went cold. Ma'am, the Corellian vanguard just disappeared. An entire dreadnought fleet. Yaga returned to her roses. One day, she murmured, they'll stop calling it disappearance and start calling it consequence. Across the stars, panic bloomed like mold. The council chamber on Vroxus, 3 had been sealed, sterilized, then abandoned. They couldn't trace what had gone wrong, only that something had. Systems began failing. Not weapons, not shields, but logic arrays, AI cognitive cores, linguistic subroutines. Ships began forgetting how to identify friend from foe. A single fleet engaged itself above the Molothan expanse, turning into a beautiful, synchronized suicide. The Empire blamed saboteurs. Then internal rebellion. Then quantum ghosts. The truth was simpler. Yaga had given them 2 days. That was generous. It's not war, she had once told Earth's War Committee. It's gardening. First, you remove the weeds. Then you burn the roots. Mason sat beside her at a wooden bench as flakes of snow ghosted against the windows. Ma'am, how did you know they'd respond like this? That silence would spook them. She poured him tea. Jasmine this time. Human comfort in a ceramic cup. Because empires are loud things. They need echoes. When you take those away, they panic. But the systems, how are they failing? We haven't attacked them. She smiled softly. Haven't we? On another planet, an archivist AI collapsed mid-sentence while reading human folklore. On a moon orbiting Yggdrasil 7, an Empire admiral received a notification that all fleet orders had been rerouted to a black hole. On Lux Prime, an ambassador tried to speak and could only say "I'm sorry" over and over again in an unfamiliar human accent. Earth hadn't hacked them. It had haunted them. Mason stared into his tea, then dared to ask, what did they do, really? That made you decide to come out of retirement? Yaga's pruning paused. Her breath frosted in the cold air. They incinerated a listening post. 47 humans. Unarmed. Botanists. Linguists. Children. They called it preemptive sterilization. Mason looked away. I didn't know. Few do. They scrubbed the records. Didn't want martyrs. But I remembered. Her fingers, wrapped in gardening gloves, clenched around a thorn. A droplet of blood welled from her palm. She ignored it. I keep their names. All 47. Every night before sleep. Silence returned to the greenhouse. In the far quadrants, Empire comms tried to reboot. AI screamed in binary. Sensor stations began reporting phenomena that shouldn't exist. Ships cloaked in nothing. Footsteps in sealed hallways. Human lullabies playing in reactor cores. Earth did not strike. Earth simply recalled itself, like a nightmare resurfacing after years of forgetting it. Vox addressed his remaining officers via wideband. This is not war. This is psychological warfare. They've weaponized our own code, our own ghosts. I want full system purges. Now. One officer hesitated. Sir, the last purge corrupted the fleet's navigation. We're flying blind. Then fly blind and ready to charge. Find Earth. Crush it. We end this. Yaga, on Earth, stirred sugar into her tea without looking up. Let them come. Mason rose suddenly, walking to the viewport. Through the falling snow, distant tremors blinked in the atmosphere. Incoming data flares. Something's happening. Interstellar relays are failing. Ma'am, entire routes are collapsing. Like someone erased the coordinates. Yaga nodded. Breadcrumb protocol. Every time they touch our code, it resets theirs. They thought they were mapping us. Turns out they were deleting themselves. Holy hell. She smiled faintly. You're catching on. A faint trill echoed from her coat pocket. She withdrew a slip of paper folded into a square. Mason blinked. What is that? A thank you note, she said. For who? She looked toward the stars. The ghosts. The ones who listened. On Vroxis 3, the summit chamber cracked. Physically, the obsidian split along its spine as if the planet itself rejected what had occurred there. Delegates fled. The chamber was marked as a cursed zone. The Empire tried to claim radiation. Others whispered it was memory. Yaga finished her tea. Mason sat quietly, hands shaking slightly. What happens next? He asked. She exhaled. Now we let silence spread. In orbit above Earth, satellites blinked with a rhythmic pulse. Not a weapon. A story. One the Empire had refused to hear. Now, it was the only thing left playing. By the second night, 15 Empire worlds had gone dark. Not exploded. Not invaded. Just off. The only remaining question in Vox's war room, stated by a young tactical officer with a tremor in her voice, was, why haven't they hit us directly? Vox didn't answer. Because he finally understood. The humans weren't attacking. They were removing. And Yaga, quiet, mannered, old-fashioned Yaga, wasn't their general. She was their gardener. He stared at the stars from his tower on Hyrax Prime, then whispered, she's letting us fall just to hear the sound. And far across the void, Baba Yaga smiled. The comrings pulsed, then failed. Not all at once. No, the collapse was more poetic than that. It began with a delay. A hesitation between send and receive, like a mind forgetting its native tongue. Then came the stuttered echoes. Repetitions of old orders resurfaced in fresh commands. Ships turning in formation to execute maneuvers last issued centuries ago. Fleet Admiral Thaz of the Orden Spire blinked into the void of his display as his cruisers danced in ancient patterns of a long-forgotten war. The system's recursive, murmured his tech lieutenant, eyes wide. It's not just glitching. It's remembering. On the other side of the galaxy, a science vessel in orbit over Quiros. 7 picked up transmissions from a defunct human probe, one that hadn't emitted signals in decades. The probe did not identify itself as human. It merely said, in plain tone, hello again. Missed you. The captain of the science vessel ordered it destroyed. The probe had already vanished. Back on Hyrax Prime, General Vox paced the war room with the deliberation of a man calculating extinction in hours, not days. The holomap was a graveyard. Dozens of systems, once bright with traffic and commerce, had gone dim. No explosions. No bodies. No broadcasts. Just silence, spreading like rot beneath floorboards. They're inside our networks, said Engineer Cal. But it's not malware. It's deeper than code. Vox snarled. Explain. Cal pulled up a schematic, overlaying neural pattern feedback loops with Earth's earliest transmission history. They're using our own backups, historical systems, archives. They buried signals in culture, music, mythology, behavioral mimicry. It's like they infected us with ourselves. The room fell silent. Vox turned slowly toward the center dais. And we didn't detect this? Cal hesitated. You told us human culture was irrelevant. The general didn't respond. He watched as another node dimmed, Galthra Prime, a loyal world, now unresponsive. The rate of loss had quickened. 31 systems in the past 3 hours. His officers were weeping quietly, faces turned away. Not from fear, but from realization. The war was over. They just hadn't died yet. Any response from Earth? Still transmitting the same song, Kel said. And a new image. He hesitated. Well, barked Vox. It's a grandmother. Pouring tea. Vox's claws curled. On Earth, in the dim light of her greenhouse bunker, Baba Yaga sat with Mason and one other guest. A sleek human operative in nondescript clothing, posture straight, face unreadable. The operative placed a data chip on the table, careful not to let it touch the porcelain saucer beside Yaga's jasmine blend. Operation Folklore is proceeding as expected, the operative said. They're eating themselves from the inside. We don't even need kinetic escalation. Yaga gave a slow nod, trimming the stem of a stubborn violet. And the contingency? Still sleeping, but responsive. She nodded again. We won't wake it unless they touch soul directly. Otherwise, let them learn. Mason's voice cracked as he whispered, Learn what? The operative answered without turning. To fear the empty chair. Baba Yaga spoke over him, her tone warm. To fear the things that smile too kindly. That invite you to tea when you came expecting blood. Somewhere in orbit around the Ashrel belt, an alien ship spiraled through its own fleet's graveyard. There had been no battle, just a slow dissociation of orders, systems refusing to respond unless spoken to in Earth dialect. Artificial gravity was now linked to Shakespearean command phrases. Engines would only activate if classical piano played on loop. The surviving commander, a pale, six-eyed tactician, scrawled a single sentence in her log. We gave the humans nothing, and they weaponized it. On Hyrax Prime, Vox activated the override. Emergency authority. Full neural command. He connected directly to the Empire's central strategic AI, a consciousness older than 5 civilizations. The chamber darkened as the AI's voice, deep and sonorous, filled the room. I am present. Begin purge, Vox ordered. Hard reset of all military systems. Wipe cultural downloads. Remove human records from central archives. Unable to comply, said the AI. Why? I no longer recognize your authority. His blood froze. Who does it recognize? There was a pause. Then, Ambassador Yaga. He drew his weapon and fired at the core. The shot echoed uselessly. The system shimmered, a ghost protocol blinking away from reality. There was no AI anymore. Only memory. Across the galaxy, Empire citizens began receiving letters. Physical. No traceable senders. Inside each was a single sentence handwritten in looping, grandmotherly script. We noticed you forgot your manners. Ships abandoned. Systems failed. Fleets surrendered to static. And in every echo, humans left behind one phrase repeated over and over in AI-encoded patterns. Let sleeping dogs lie. Mason stood in the center of Yaga's garden, watching petals fall in a slow dance to the floor. This isn't a war, he said. No, Yaga replied. It's a funeral. I'm just reading the eulogy slow enough for them to realize who died. He looked up at her, eyes clouded. Why the theatrics? Why not strike directly? She sipped her tea, quiet for a long time. Then, because fear lingers longer than fire. And I'm not trying to destroy them. I'm trying to teach them. Teach them what? That we asked politely. And they laughed. In the shattered ruins of the Empire's central archive, a final command scrawled itself across every remaining screen. It played in every known language, voiced gentle, loving even. This isn't revenge. This is gardening. The weeds refuse to grow with grace. Vox watched from his tower as the stars blinked out, not from death, but from retreat. Maps deleting themselves. Systems resigning. No resistance. They hadn't lost a war. They had been unwritten. He turned to his staff. Is there anyone left we can contact? One of his officers checked transmissions. The Venery matriarchs tried to send a peace proposal. It came back auto-stamped. With what? The officer turned the screen. A smiling cartoon grandmother, holding a cup of tea. And beneath it, we've already made our arrangements. The war room cracked. Not physically, not immediately, but something inside it broke. Something beneath uniforms and procedures and strategic mindsets. The certainty of their place in the universe had unraveled. And in its place, a quiet fear bloomed. The fear of polite people. Vox sat down. For the first time in his service, he lowered his banner. Not from defeat, but because he no longer believed in its color. "I want to speak to her," he muttered. "To the Baba Yaga." No one moved. Finally, Cal whispered, "She doesn't speak to you. Not now. Not anymore." Outside, the galaxy dimmed. On Earth, Baba Yaga placed a fresh rose in a vase. Mason watched her carefully, hands still trembling, his voice hushed. "Is it over?" She smiled, tilting her head slightly. "Almost." She turned back to her flowers. "But there's one more visit," she said, "before the garden is quiet again." The wind that brushed the garden smelled of winter and ash. It carried the breath of stars that no longer shone, systems scrubbed from the galactic map, histories erased not by fire or bomb, but by the quiet work of memory. Earth's soil, beneath its gentle frost, held no trace of blood, only roots. The garden behind Baba Yaga's bunker bloomed defiantly, pale roses, winterkale, late-season lavender, all thriving where others assumed nothing could. From a shuttle, General Vox stepped down with boots scuffed and armor dull. He no longer wore rank. No guards flanked him. Just a data slab clutched in one shaking hand and the weight of extinction trailing behind. Yaga waited by the trellis, fingers dusted in potting soil, a wool shawl draped over her shoulders like nightfall. She didn't rise to meet him. She stayed with her roses, snipping away a yellowed leaf. "You're early," she said, voice as calm as snowlight. "I expected you tomorrow." Vox's throat tightened. "There won't be a tomorrow. Not for us." She nodded slightly, not in sympathy, but in confirmation. "I suppose that's why you came," she added. "I came for answers. I've given plenty. No one listened." He stepped closer, careful not to crush the herbs underfoot. "Then say it plainly. What was this?" She looked up, the sun reflecting in the fine lines at the corners of her eyes. "It was a consequence," she said. "Nothing more." Vox's mouth worked to form a protest, but no words came. "They call you a monster," he managed finally. "And yet," she replied, brushing dirt from her hands, "you came to my garden instead of worship." He took that in. Around them, the earth sighed. A honeybee wandered too far from its hive and danced lazily in the cold. "We should have wiped you out the first time Earth defied orders," Vox muttered. "Back when you were still clawing up from the mud." Yaga offered a faint smile. "You tried. You sent drones, plagues, even quiet deals. We kept recipes. You made demands. We wrote songs. I don't understand how you did this. Without fleets. Without weapons. We used what we had," she said. "Your systems. Your memories. Your assumptions." He stared at the garden like it was a graveyard. "You dismantled an empire with manners and poetry." "No," she said. "I dismantled it with grief. The rest was seasoning." Vox flinched, looking away. Was it worth it? She considered that, watching a pair of mourning doves flutter across the fence. "I held on to peace for as long as I could," she said softly. "You burned a listening post. You erased names like they were clutter. You called it sterilization." Her voice never rose, but the cold seemed sharper now. "They were my students. My children's children. 47 souls I taught how to find beauty in foreign stars." Vox swallowed. "We thought Earth was bluffing," he whispered. "You always thought we were bluffing," she said. "Because we asked nicely. Because we set the table before retaliating." He looked down at the data slab, at the last blinking record of the Triumvirate's surrender protocols. Unsigned, unacknowledged. "We've lost everything," he said. "Entire histories wiped. No species left loyal. Even our own ships refuse orders now." "Memory is louder than tyranny," she replied. He lifted his eyes. "What happens now?" She turned and gestured toward the edge of the garden, where a simple wooden chair waited beside a second, empty one. "You sit," she said. "You listen. And then you remember." He hesitated. "That's all." "No," she said gently. "Then you return home and you rebuild. But this time without forgetting." They sat. The sun peeked over the clouds like a child through curtains, casting long light across the frozen grass. Vox noticed the careful rows, how each plant had space to breathe. Nothing crowded, nothing wasted, just quiet design. You were a war tactician once, he said. I was a child of war. Then I became a gardener. What changed? I realized seeds don't need shouting to grow, she answered. They need time and quiet. He studied her hands, delicate, veined, strong. Not hands that flinched. Not hands that ever once forgot. I thought the galaxy feared humans because of your unpredictability, Vox muttered. They fear us, she said, because we take pain and turn it into plan. A silence settled between them, not heavy, not hostile, but sacred. Then Yaga spoke, as if finishing a story he hadn't realized she'd begun. We offered peace. We shared maps, stories, alliances. You thought we were weak because we laughed. Because we danced, made jokes, held hands in the dark. She looked at him then. Really looked. But we have oceans older than your myths. Forests that remember the taste of meteors. You mistook patience for passivity. He shifted in his seat. You talk like humanity is a force of nature. No, she said. We're a consequence of forgetting nature. Something in her tone made him still. It wasn't threat. It was truth. And truth, as he had learned too late, was not negotiable. A soft ping vibrated on her old terminal. She rose, checked the message, and returned. The Venery have begun planting human crops. Tomatoes. Spinach. They're calling it Earth's apology. He blinked. That's unexpected. She smiled. Grief is the first step toward growth. We just gave them the soil. He leaned back, weariness clinging to him like dust. There are still others. Survivors. Worlds that don't understand what's happened. They will, she said. In time. And if they try again? She turned toward the roses, running a fingertip across a thorn. Then someone else will tend the garden. He nodded slowly. Then, I never learned her name. She tilted her head. The girl from a listening post, he clarified. The one you keep talking about. Yaga blinked, and something tightened in her chest. Clara, she whispered. Her name was Clara. Vox lowered his eyes. I'll remember her. I know, she said. That's why I let you come. He rose. The garden seemed warmer now, or maybe the cold had simply stopped biting. Will you forgive us? She didn't answer at first. Then she stood beside him and offered a weathered envelope, sealed with wax. Inside was a seed. Plant this when the frost breaks, she said, and speak her name. He took it, holding it like something fragile and burning. Goodbye, General, she said. As he stepped toward the shuttle, he paused once more. You could have destroyed us. I did, she replied, but gently. The shuttle lifted from the snow-packed clearing. She stood alone now, surrounded by roots in bloom. The sky overhead shimmered with distant storms, but her feet were steady, planted in soil shaped by memory and pain. Behind her, a new rose budded where none had bloomed before. Its color, soft violet, with a deep red heart, had no name. Not yet. But one day it would be remembered.